Think of the internet like a stage. Every day, someone new steps into the spotlight. Lucky clip, a viral moment. And then they're gone before most people even learn their name. And then there is Lacy. One day you had never heard of him. The next, his clips were everywhere on your For You page. And the day after that, he was in a $15 million FaZe house doing a 30-day subathon that redefined what a content comeback looked like. What looked from the outside like an overnight explosion was actually something much more calculated. 500 days before any of this happened, Lacy had already built the blueprint. He just had not executed it yet. Before FaZe, before the 30-day subathon, before the viral clips flooding every For You page, Lacy was a Fortnite streamer with a few thousand followers on Twitch who made a decision that most people looking in from the outside would have called reckless. He dropped out of college, packed his bags, and moved to Dallas to pursue streaming full-time. He was working 2 jobs at the time, Panera and Walmart, and streaming was not even something he thought was a realistic possibility yet. What most people did not see was that the move was not impulsive. It was the first step in a 3-part plan he had already built in his head before he ever booked the flight. A plan he would later describe as meticulous. A plan he believed he executed perfectly. The first part of Lacy's plan was recognizing that Fortnite was a dying wave, and getting out before the wave took him down with it. IRL streaming was the future. He could see it. The question was how to make the transition without losing the audience he had already built and without trying to manufacture something that felt fake. He needed a format that was entertaining on its own terms, that would attract new viewers and not just recycle the Fortnite crowd. And the format he landed on was edates, online dating shows hosted on stream. The concept was simple, but the execution was what mattered. He brought in creators with their own audiences. Clicks, Jinxie, Darla. Each collab brought a wave of new viewers who had never encountered Lacy before. And then on February 25th, he hosted an e-date for Kai Cenat, and the metrics doubled overnight. The second part of the plan was about what happened after the stream ended. Most streamers go live, produce content, and hope people find it. Lacy built a machine to make sure they did. He expanded his clipping operation from a small TikTok hustle with 2 pages and 1 editor into an open marketplace, where he paid a premium to clippers for driving eyeballs to his stream. At its peak, this operation had nearly 1,600 clippers posting his content. In a single month, his hashtag alone pulled over 60 million views. He was not the first to think of this. The model traced back to Andrew Tate, who had weaponized the same kind of affiliate-based viral distribution to flood the internet with his content before most people knew who he was. Lacy adapted the concept, but instead of controversy driving the clips, it was entertainment. His clips were designed to work like movie trailers. Give someone enough to want to see the rest, not enough to replace watching the stream. The third part of the plan required timing that Lacy did not fully control. But he was in exactly the right position when the timing arrived. By late 2022, FaZe Clan had hit rock bottom. Tone-deaf sponsorships, bloated budgets, a diluted brand identity that had lost everything that made FaZe iconic in the first place. The organization that had built its name on authenticity had become a corporate shell. FaZe co-founder Banks stepped back in as CEO. He and the founding members did something drastic. They removed nearly the entire roster and wiped the slate clean. Their mission was simple: strip out the excess, cut the noise, return FaZe to its roots. And they were not just looking for gamers anymore. They were looking for culture shapers, creators who could redefine what the brand stood for. And Lacy was on the list. The moment that changed public opinion about the new FaZe was a trip to Japan, funded by the organization, captured on camera, and completely chaotic in the way that only works when the chemistry between the people involved is genuinely real. The trip was not just a content goldmine. It was proof that this group had the humor and the raw creativity to make FaZe mean something again. For the first time watching that content, you could see what Banks must have seen when he signed them. These were not people coasting on a famous name. They were building something new, and they were doing it fast. Back at the FaZe house, Lacy and Stable Ronaldo stumbled into what would become one of the most defining elements of their brand: trolling. but not random trolling. Deliberate trolling engineered to polarize. Every prank, every outrageous moment was calculated to do one specific thing. Get people talking, not necessarily about something positive, just talking. The science behind it was simple. The internet amplifies conflict. If you do something that makes half the audience love you and the other half furious, both halves are sharing the clip. And the clip that divides is the clip that travels furthest. The Bradley Martin moment became the perfect example of this dynamic. Viewers called Lacy and Ron immature and obnoxious. Others rallied against Bradley for overreacting. The debate itself became the fuel. That clip pulled 40 million views across platforms. By this point, the machine Lacy had built was running at full speed. The hashtag alone was pulling over 60 million views in a single month. The edate format had more than doubled his metrics. FaZe platform had amplified everything. And TikTok, with its 1,600 clipper army, had turned Lacy into a name that was impossible to avoid even for people who had actively never sought him out. His content had achieved what almost no creator achieves at his level of time in the game. Ubiquity without requiring the audience to choose to find him. He was simply there, on every feed, in every recommendation, whether you were looking for him or not. And then came the 30-day subathon. FaZe rented a $3.1 million mansion and turned it into a content factory. Cameras rolled around the clock. Every moment planned or unplanned became content. High-profile guests, curated events, the kind of chaos that only works when the people creating it genuinely like each other. Each FaZe member had a role. Each contributed their own audience. And for 30 days, the internet had something to tune into at any hour. The production value was unlike anything the group had attempted before. And at the end of it, when the awards ceremony rolled around and Banks stood up to name the subathon Golden Boy, the winner was Lacy. Banks described him as one of the most genuine people he had ever met. Someone who never complained. Someone who let everything roll off. Someone who showed up for other people's content just because he wanted to help. When Lacy accepted the Golden Boy Award, he did not talk about the views or the clips or the strategy. He talked about the people. 2 years ago, he was in college. He was working at Panera and Walmart. He did not think streaming was even a possibility. And then he started streaming and FaZe called. And the people he met through that process became something he had not expected. A genuine family. He stood on that stage and told the people next to him that no matter what happened next, no matter how many years passed, if they called him, he would be there. It was not a scripted moment. It was just someone who had worked for a long time towards something, had finally gotten there, and was genuinely overwhelmed by the fact that the people he got there with were worth the journey. Looking at all of it together, the picture becomes clearer. Lacy's rise was not the result of luck or a viral accident. It was the result of someone who had been paying attention long enough to understand what the internet rewards and then building a system to give it that thing consistently. The edate format understood that audiences want personalities, not just games. The clip farming understood that reach in 2024 requires infrastructure, not just content. The FaZe timing understood that the biggest platforms give leverage that individual effort cannot replace. And then on top of all of that, the thing that Banks named when he gave him the Golden Boy Award. He is actually that person when the cameras are off. The strategy works because the person executing it is genuine. And that combination is rarer than any single tactic. Here is what the Lacy story actually is. It is not a story about going viral. It is a story about someone who watched the internet long enough to understand its logic, built a plan around that logic before he had the resources to execute it, and then spent 500 days executing it one step at a time. The edate pivot was not a guess. The clip farming machine was not an accident. The FaZe timing was not luck. It was someone who had thought carefully about what they were doing in a space where most people are just hoping something works. He said he executed it perfectly. Looking at the results, it is genuinely hard to argue otherwise.